Alright, your IA is due 2 weeks from Thursday. Okay, if you haven't noticed, the due date is kind of sneaking up on us here. Alright, so 2 weeks from Thursday. Most of you, I got your rough drafts, and you got feedback from those. But I wanted to kind of go over some do's and don'ts after I went through them. I wanted to make sure that we had some of these basics. Just part of it's just for consistency, part of it's for neatness and whatnot. The IB doesn't really give a whole lot of details as far as exactly how they want it formatted. Yeah. They don't, but I'm gonna give you some, basically, they're kind of accepted practices. And again, even these are somewhat flexible, but a couple of these other things are just trying to get to the root of what our goal really is here. And making sure that you have a well constructed paper, okay? First of all, do explore, do not report, okay? A couple of the papers that I read were really just borderline reports, okay? You need to be doing an exploration, okay? And you can even, this can be something as simple as, hey, here are numbers that we found. I wonder if it would work if we did this, okay? So initially you may be reporting on someone else's results, but you then need to do the exploration yourself. Would it still work if we had imaginary numbers? Would it still work if we had radicals, or if we had, rational numbers versus irrational numbers, or something like that? You can do some sort of an exploration, but it can't just be a report of what other folks have done, okay? And that's really kind of the biggest thing here. This is the mathematical exploration. Secondly, at the top of the paper, I got a lot of different stuff, and it's fine. Again, this is not something that's mandated, but I think it would just look nice. Don't just jump right into your introduction. Make sure that you have a title, okay? Your title isn't necessarily graded, but it does, everything helps. Everything, that can catch the reader's attention can help. Obviously, put your name on there, IB Mathematics, SL Internal Assessment, and then you can just put spring of 2015, rather than trying to put an exact date on there. And then on the following pages, include a page header with at least like your last name and the page number, like you would for an English paper. Okay? So, without that, you're making it very easy for your pages to get mixed up. Or when we go to scan them to send them in or something, we could have page, 1 and 2, and then 5 and 6, and then 3 and 4, and then it's confusing, okay? So make sure you have page numbers and with your last name so we don't accidentally, if we drop a whole pile of papers or something, then we're trying to figure out whose page goes with who. Alright. Make sure you use a standard font, something like Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, okay? And use size 11 or 12. 12 would be better, but don't use some artistic or script, it's supposed to look like handwriting or whatever. Don't use that, because our goal here is readability, okay, not artistic expression, okay?
Did you post that on the website?
Yeah, I'll post all of this, because actually what I want to do is get any ideas that you guys may have come up with as well to add to this, and we'll post the final copy on the website. make sure you at least use 1.5 line spacing, if not doubled. Okay, double spacing. Don't just use single space lines, and that's for help in grading, putting marks in. Do remember what?
Should we have a title page?
You don't have to. If you want to just put the header here on the top of the first page, that's fine. Some people put a header or put a whole cover sheet. I saw in one thing they were like, if your school has a crest, go ahead and put that on your cover page too. It's, whatever. This isn't a 5th grade report. You get your shiny plastic binder to put it in too. So, anyways. Remember your audience. As you're writing and rewriting and editing, remember that your audience is other IBSL math students. Okay? Don't write like you're talking to middle schoolers. Alright? You don't have to explain every tiny little detail. But also don't write like you're talking to a high school professor or a college professor. Make sure that you're explaining things like you would to your classmates, okay? That's why way back when we did those introductions, we just did the peer reviews, all right? So you could see, hey, my classmates know what in the world I'm talking about, okay? As far as showing work, make sure you show all the work for the mathematics that makes your exploration standard level. Okay? If you're doing a correlation, make sure you show all the work to find Pearson's R. Okay? I had one, I can't remember which class it was even in, but they just said, oh, I'm going to do a Pearson's R. I punched this into my calculator in 2 lists and I hit stats. And it spit out Pearson's R for me. And that's not going to fly. You need to show the work being done, okay? But you don't need to show work for basic calculations or give explanations for processes that are all in the prior learning topics. If you're using SOHCAHTOA, you can just say, I used sine of this angle to find this value, okay? That's all prior learning. Now, if you're using the law of sines or the law of cosines, or if you're using, something else, then yeah, you need to explain that. Another thing is with the technology, you do not need to give step-by-step directions for how to use your calculator or any other piece of software. You can just state, hey, I used this function on my calculator and this is the result. Or I used this function on this program. I used Microsoft Excel to do a spreadsheet and I ran this and this is what I got. Or I used GeoGebra or whatever you would have used. Just state what you used. You don't have to say, well, I opened this menu and I went to this thing and then I entered this. You don't have to do that, okay? Another thing, and this was missing in a number of them, make sure you include a bibliography page and in-text citations, and that includes ones for formulas. Where did you get this formula? If it's out of the book, that's fine, just cite it, okay? Especially because, there was one person, I think in the other class, who had found a different formula for Pearson's R. And there are 2 valid formulas. Honestly, I had never seen the other formulas, so I did some digging and I looked at their site, okay, and I found, yeah, that's a valid formula, and they came out with the same results as the one I had given in class, alright? But those types of things, if you cite your source, you can avoid losing marks for that kind of stuff. Another issue that came up is someone was doing the chi-squared. And there's actually, depending on your context or what kind of study you're doing, you actually find your degrees of freedom and use critical values differently. There's 2 different critical value tables and 2 different ways to calculate degrees of freedom depending on what kind of a study you're doing.
Thanks for the tip on that
What?
Thanks for the tip on that
You know, honestly, I had never done the other kind. And then I saw your critical value and I knew that critical value wasn't, not that I have them memorized, but I was like, that's way too high or whatever. So that's what got me looking, and I learned a little bit about further uses of chi-squareds. But all of that helps, okay? Now, when you're citing something that you got from a website, especially if there was no like specific author, you can just put, mathworld.com or whatever site you got it from. Or if you got data from something, AmericanHeartAssociation.com or whatever the website would be. You don't have to put the entire URL, you can just put that top level domain or second level domain. And that'll be enough. Do not just include a page at the end with a list of URLs, okay? You need to cite those sources, online sources. It's not like we're going to be double checking to make sure MLA is done perfectly, but it should at least resemble MLA formatting, okay? And then please make sure you turn it in by Thursday, February 12th, okay? The raw score out of 20 is reported to IB, and like I described, I turn in my highest, lowest, median, and my 2 interquartiles, and they grade those, and then they will use those to normalize the scores I gave. If I grade you a little too easy, or if I grade you a little too hard, those will shift a little bit. I will say, talking to Miss Barheim, who's taught IB higher level for a lot of years, she said no matter what I do, every year they get adjusted somehow. So, but anyways, this is going to be weighted, the score I give you, I'm going to use, and I'm going to weight it just like I would the IB tests. I'll take the percentage out of 20, square root it, and then multiply it by 100 and give you a score out of 100 for our class. So it not only counts for your IB, but it'll actually get you something for the class, and it should be a good, grade for the class. If you think about it, if you got, technically like a 12.5, but we don't do half points. So if you got a 13 out of 20, that's a B minus. Okay, so that's not too bad. To get a C, I think you could get a 5. To get a C minus, I think, if I'm doing it correct.
Oh, it's curved.
So it's kind of, because you do the square root, because you're doing a square root, it's not, it helps everybody, but it helps people who struggled a little more than it helps the people who did well. But it still helps everybody. But anyways, if it's not turned in on the 12th, it's not going to affect your IB raw score at all, okay? But it will affect your class grade, okay?
Print it out or be emailed?
Yes, print it out, and I'll probably have you email it to me as well, just to make sure if there's something that messed up in the printing or something. But I will say, when you print it, double check, okay? Somebody, I think in second period, turned it in, and for some reason all their pictures didn't print. They just had empty space where all their pictures were. Okay, those are kinds of things that we need to make sure we get worked out. Okay? Now, what are some other thoughts that you guys had?
I think it's May 2015 we have to write
May 2015?
That would be what we have to write for the TOK.
Is that what? Okay. Well, I'll defer to Mr. Ray because she's the IB coordinator, so she would know better than I would. So, okay.
Because it has to be either May or November. Because like some people finish.
Yeah, some people do the winter. Yeah. Okay. You know, one thing I will say as well, I'll put this in here. Make sure that you use the equation editor. Do not use star or x for multiplication or that for exponents. Okay.
If you pick 11 is too small, I think you're just better off with not even giving them the option of 11.
Yeah. I personally don't care. I think the preference is 12, but some like if you're if it's getting a little long and you don't want it to seem quite as long, you can. But I don't want you like bumping it down to 10, so it's down to like however many pages.
You change the margins.
You mess with the margins
And your punctuation.
Oh, I don't know this.
and your punctuation.
Didn't justify it if you were desperate.
Justify it. Yeah, we learned all the tricks. So that's why we have to put specifics like that on papers and stuff. People would, or that's why they just say do so many words. So
I did all my 5th grade papers in the font called Arial Bold. It technically wasn't bolded on the word, but it was like as large as like a size 14 font. I'm so proud of that.
5th grader?
that's fun.
Started early.
I did.
All right. Any other recommendations or things that you guys can think of? Number of pages, there technically is no limit, min or max.
Isn't it between 6 and...
The recommended is 6 to 12. Okay. Again, that's not mandated by IB. 6 to 12 is ideal. You know, to really do a good exploration in less than 6 is a stretch. And if you're getting over 12, chances are you're either super excited about it or you're just kind of rambling a little bit, or going beyond really what you're being asked to do. You know. So, yes.
If you say cite the formulas we use, would you recommend using footnotes or in parentheses?
Typically, I know they don't want you just putting like footnotes like in an appendix at the end. They don't want any kind of appendix. But
Or how
I think
The bottom corner of the
I think ideally if you just put in parentheses afterward, that would be best. Footnotes are kind of being used less as far as I've seen nowadays, but it's not the kind of thing that they're gonna mark off for, but it could impact the overall perception, I guess. Vicky?
Isn't it enough to have the bibliography at the end, except for like quoting something?
Well, if you think about it, when you're giving a formula, you are quoting. I know it kind of seems weird, but that is like a quotation. If you're putting a picture in, I mean, you're basically quoting the picture or the table or something. So you should cite that.
How should I cite on the picture? Because I have.
If you got the picture from what's one of the websites you got the picture from?
Some not this fun or whatever.
Okay. Well, then what you would do is just kind of underneath the picture, and you can make the font real small or whatever, even. But, you can just put, mathisfun.com. You don't have to put like the whole URL for the picture or anything like that. You see people do that sometimes, and that's really not proper because it's just a mess. But
Do we need a word count?
no. Vivian?
If we have like statistics from online, should we include like how we found those statistics? And like an explanation?
You can cite your source.
Yeah, but like should we be like, oh, I looked for statistics online and I found this, or
You don't have to.
no? That's
No. I mean, if you're looking to get some length, you might, but
yeah.
that's not something you necessarily have to do.
So you just start with the explanation with the data.
Yeah, say I found this data taken from
And then,
whatever source shows this or whatever.
Could you put on there, no colored graphs?
Oh yeah, good. Here I'll put this.
Oh, no color?
Well, do make sure graphs are distinguishable in grayscale. These will be printed out black and white or scanned black and white if they're sent in, okay, or grayscale. So make sure, if you want, you could even format them rather by color. You can use like different patterns, like do one solid bar and one polka dot bar and one striped bar or something like that, just to make sure that it's clear.
If you do a table with like gray, will that show up?
If you can tell the difference on the computer screen, I would recommend just making your color scheme for them grayscale to begin with, and then you can see. If you can tell the difference on your computer screen, 90% of the time you'll be able to tell the difference on when you print it out. Okay. Anything else? All right, that's good. I think that covers pretty much everything. So I'll put this online so you can reference back to it. But these are just the little finishing touch kind of things I think that could really make, it may only make the difference in 1 or 2 points, but hey, 1 or 2 points can be a big deal. Okay, so.